Hey everyone, back to do another quick overview of this coming up week, February 6th, in the market. So first thing I always like to do is look at the earnings coming up. We do have some big name earnings. We have Uber, Disney on Wednesday. We have PayPal, some of the big ones. And then looking at the econ calendar for the week, we have International Trade Goods Services pre-market and jobless claims on Thursday. We have Fed speaking. I think there's some other Fed speaking throughout the week as well. So look at the Fed calendar to note those. The next thing I like to do is I like to look at the expected move of each stock that I'm watching. So SPY, we have an expected move of 7.67 for the week. And I have my little calculator that I put it in. So the first standard deviation is 420 to 404, and second is 427 to 397. So I want to kind of show an example of how I use this and how it's effective. So even though we pushed, this is actually last week's and where we actually closed. So even though we pushed into the 417s, we closed below the first standard deviation at 412. So in green is all the stocks that close within the first standard deviation, and yellow is everything that closed within the second standard deviation. So even Apple with earnings and big moves up and down, we still close within the second standard deviation. So just by looking at these numbers, we have a realistic idea of what the actual close or where the highs and lows are going to be for the week. Um, Sometimes I do go past it, but very rarely. So this is just a pretty good prime example of a volatile week, and everything was in the standard deviations. And you can even look at the expected moves. The volatility was projected to be within those ranges. So looking at this week of SPY, the volatility is a little lower. QQQs is still pretty high. Um, but now we'll jump into the stocks. So looking at SPY really quickly, we finally broke above this 410 area. So this 410, 408 is going to be our new support, like our new floor that we're going to be keeping an eye on. 420, this little gap is still going to be a big resistance area. Pushing up above this will be the 425 to 430 area. And then we still have 415 is kind of showing some support, resistance here. Below 408, we see 400 down to this like 396, 395 area for potential bounces. If we keep going lower, we're going to get down to this 392, 390 area. Those are kind of areas I'm watching, but this holding this 410, 408 area is going to be key because that was the break that we had. So you keep an eye on that. Moving to QQQ. QQQ after with the earnings and everything actually gapped up over this previous gap we had over here, and we kind of started to fill it. So we had a pretty big rejection up here, like 312, 313 area, which is kind of this resistance area. Um, so I think the next key areas are if we fill this gap are 300. If we break below 300, we have this 296, 295 area as a big support, kind of the floor here. And then same on the upside, we're gonna have to get over this 312, 313 area, pushing up into this potential 320 area. So that's kind of what I'm watching here on QQQ. Next, IWM. IWM finally broke this 190 area. This has been a big area. Finally got over it and pushed and touched the almost 200. Um, so this one I'll be watching. I'll be watching the 195 area as that was the other big key area here. And then 200, 201 to 202. These are big areas right here. To the upside, we break past that, we could see 205. On the downside, if we can't hold the 195 area, we could see 190 fairly quickly and then back down to this 187 area. So those are kind of the areas I'll be watching on IWM. And then now to move into my weekly watch list. Starting with Apple. So Apple had earnings. We got a big push. We have it engulfing. We had a gap up here. This 157.50 has been a big resistance. You can see it rejecting almost a T right here, here, and then that's where we moved up highs. So coming down a couple time frames, I'm gonna be watching this 150 area, 150 to 152 for potential bounce. We can hold that. We can see another push up on Apple. If we break below 150, I expect us to come down and fill this gap down to this 145, 144 support area. And next would be 140. A couple of things I'm watching there. Amazon, we filled a lot of these gaps. We still, and we got a pretty hard rejection at this about 115 area. We do still have a little small gap here at 110. So for Amazon, my main areas I'm watching are 100 to 97. We need to hold this area of support to keep pushing higher. That's going to be key areas that I'm watching on the downside. 100 as a potential bounce to the 97 area as potential bounce. Then moving on, we have AMD. AMD, same. We had a really strong push up. We have an inside bar on the daily. And if we actually come down to the hourly, we do kind of have a 1 hour double top here. This 90 area is a very big price level, but we could see a bounce in this 85 to 84 area right here. If we see a bounce, we could see a push higher. So that's something I'm gonna be keeping an eye on here. If we do break below this 84 area, I'm gonna look for 80 and then potentially this gap fill around 77 down to the downside. We already went over Amazon. Moderna, I think has a pretty clear bear flag on the daily and the 4 hour. We have decreasing volume while it's pushing up. Somebody watching this 178 to 180 area, we have a small gap right here, so we can see a potential push up to fill it. 170 to the downside. If we break below 170, 168, you see now they're pushed down to 162 to 160. So that's going to be watching on here. Even on the daily, you can see it's a pretty clear bear flag. Failure to go higher, forming a little bear flag right here. So potential shorts up in this area. Some more downside. Microsoft, we had a pretty big rejection at this 165 area. 265 area. So coming down, 255 is going to be a big support area, then this gap. So we could come fill this gap. And as long as we hold 255, I feel like it could still be bullish. The next support would be 250. To the top side, if we break above that 260, we could see 265, and then this 267 area is going to be key into the 270s. Square. So I'm watching Square. We've been pushing up high, same here. We're kind of reaching this 90 area. We're starting to get some resistance. This is a big level on Square. So coming down, let me zoom in a little bit. Right here, I want to see if we come into this base and we're able to hold this base between 82 to 80, we could see another bounce up to come back up to retest this 90 area. If we are not able to hold this 80 area, we could see a lot of downside down to the 75 and then potentially down to 70. So the key things I'm gonna be watching. PayPal does have earnings this week, and it could be a sympathy on Square, so something I'm keeping an eye on. And then finally, we have Tesla. Tesla has been pushing for a while now, especially after earnings. We did reject that they're on this 197 as 200 is a very big wall, and we rejected off here. I do see a potential inverse head and shoulders potentially forming if we can't get over and we start rejecting. 180 is going to be a key area to watch. If we keep breaking below 180, this 165 area, I'm going to be watching for big potential bounce to the upside, and that would be completing the right shoulder on this head and shoulders. So it's just a quick overview on things I'm watching. Sorry, I mentioned on Tesla too, we still have this gap. So if we're not able to hold this, we could fill this gap pretty quickly. So let's keep few quick things I'm watching for this week coming up. Thanks.